By the 1960s, women still made up just a fraction of the American military, and most still served as nurses. But in Vietnam, more women found themselves serving near the front lines in jobs other than nursing. Still not allowed in combat, but still very much in harm's way.
My job in Vietnam, I handled the dead.
Susan Hack of Dane was 20 years old when she enlisted in the United States Army in 1968. She wanted to go to Vietnam after finding out her brother was going, joining the more than 165,000 people from Wisconsin who served there.
He said, "Sis, I just got drafted," and I said, "I'll be right there." And he said, "What? I'm going to Vietnam." And I said, "I'll be there with you."
At the time, the Army required women to earn the rank of sergeant before they could serve in Vietnam. It took Hack a year to do that. General William Westmoreland, commander of U.S. forces in Vietnam, did not make it easy for women in the military.
He just did not believe women belonged in the Army or any branch of the service. There was no place for us in the service. You were treated just like the men. I mean, he said, that was it. Charlie blew up our lines. We went without water to take showers for a week, and you just remember to keep your canteen full just like the men did.
As an administrative specialist, Hack was assigned to the U.S. base in Long Binh, where she processed the remains of soldiers who were killed in action, getting their paperwork and personal belongings in order to be flown back to the U.S.
And that was a daily thing. When you were killed, where they were killed, how they were killed. You know, and it was every single day.
In February of 1969, the base at Long Binh came under attack by the North Vietnamese. Susan Hack and the 80 other women at the base were forced to spend a week living in underground concrete bunkers and issued a loaded pistol and a single grenade.
They said, here's the gun and the grenade. The grenade is to go blow up the office, if you know, the documents in the office, if you can. And there's 6 bullets. You can shoot 5 gooks and kill yourself if you don't want to be captured. That's what they told us.
And even though they weren't allowed to fight, women who served in Vietnam were often treated like the men who did when they returned.
When we came home from Vietnam, we're all, I'd say about 85% are still very bitter on how we got treated. And we all, and I, you know, one guy...
You among them?
Very much.
How were you treated?
I'm gonna say I was thrown out of a cab, literally picked up by little pill. I was sitting in the back seat, and the cab driver said, "This is her cab." He said, "No, baby killer gets a cab before me." For 15 years, I told no one I was a Vietnam vet. Nobody. My children, you know, nobody knew that. No, you were afraid to.
Like many Vietnam vets, Susan Hack got past that fear. She became the first woman commander of a VFW post in Wisconsin. Her service in Vietnam, now a badge of pride.
I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, okay? I would never, ever say I'm sorry for what I did for my country.
2 generations later, American women found themselves on more equal but dangerous footing with men in the military as they began to phase into combat roles in the early 1990s. On April 9th, 2004, Wisconsin lost its first woman in military combat. 20-year-old Michelle Whitmer of New Berlin was part of the Wisconsin National Guard's 32nd Police Company, and she was killed in an ambush outside of Baghdad.
We got to know each other because her and I were the only 2 people who gave haircuts to the other girls while we were over there.
Laura Colbert, then Naylor, served with Michelle Whitmer in Iraq. Like many in the Wisconsin National Guard before the September 11th attacks, the Wapaka High School grad joined as a way to pay for college. She never dreamed she'd be called to active duty in a combat zone.
My team leader had never had a female soldier before going into this type of scenario, and when he found out that I was in his team, he said he was really apprehensive. But the more he got to know me and realized that I was just as able, if not more willing than a lot of the other guys to do the job at hand, then he knew that you can't differentiate by gender anymore in the military.
But we're teaching the police officers how to use Glocks in this picture.
That's a good one.
32nd Police Company's primary duty was training Iraqi police officers, Muslim men unaccustomed to looking at the face of, let alone taking orders from, a woman.
It was hard at first, and a lot of them didn't want to look at me, they didn't want to listen to me.
But just a few months into their 13 months in country, the MPs ended up on armed patrols and raids with infantry units. They were shot at and attacked with roadside bombs, and suddenly Wisconsin was a world and a lifetime away.
After a while, it was almost like this home in the United States was a heavenly facade. Like, it didn't really exist. Like, where we were, that was all we knew. And it was really hard for me to realize that I could also be a civilian when I went home. And I would dream about home, and it would be the worst thing to wake up in the morning and realize I was still in Iraq. It was like a nightmare to dream about home.
But women in combat also face danger from within. According to the Pentagon, 1 in 3 women in the U.S. military has been sexually assaulted, usually by a fellow member of the military. That is twice the rape rate for civilian women.
It never happened on my watch, but I know that it happens out there, and I know people it's happened to. We had a lot of women in the unit, so we could back each other up, and we protected each other in a sense. And the guys never crossed that line, but I do know personally some females who were in a unit where they were 1 or 2 of the only females, and they were taken advantage of in those situations.
But there is no gender bias when it comes to the effects of fighting a war.
You definitely become a different person, thicker skinned, more almost inhuman. I just remember I was spitting, I was swearing, I was like one of the guys, right? And that's not who I am. And so coming back and trying to transition back into the civilian Laura was an incredibly difficult thing. And a lot of us suffered from this almost immediate depression when we got home because we didn't feel like we belonged where we had left off because war had hardened us so much.
The student max is 12. We have to...
After 16 months on active duty, Laura returned to the UW, finished her degree, and became a teacher. Along the way, she was treated for post-traumatic stress and says there are still things today, 8 years later, that can trigger strong emotions. But as she looks back at her experience as a woman soldier in combat, she sees a clear conclusion.
I think that we are trying to overanalyze the situation. We are all humans. We are all equal. And as far as I'm concerned, we can do the job just as good as the men can do it. When you are there, you are a soldier, and that's all that really matters.